Are you looking to buy an investment property in 2019, maybe your first or even your second property, but you're quite confused about what the right thing is to do? Well, if so, this video is for you. Hi, my name's Nero from Investment Rise, and I've been investing personally now for 17 years. And recently I've been getting a lot of questions from people who said, Nero, if you were to invest for the first time today, if you were to invest right now when the Sydney and Melbourne markets have just come off their biggest booms and those two markets are falling right now, what would you do? How would you go about buying your first investment property? And that's really what I want to go through in this video. I want to go through, I guess, the lessons I've learned over the last 17 years investing personally, plus everything that I've learned over, say, the last 9 years helping clients invest in property all around the country to the tune of now $66.2 million worth of property. So what I've got here are a set of, I guess, secret cards. These cards contain 7 things, 7 steps that I would recommend you go through if you are looking to invest, okay? And many of these are going to be quite counterintuitive. They're going to be probably quite different to maybe what a lot of your friends and family have said or what your local real estate agent has said, okay? And I expect that because I'm used to being criticized online for a lot of stuff that I say that's quite different to a lot of prevailing wisdom out there. For example, I came out online in late 2015, early 2016 and said that if you want to invest for capital growth over the coming few years, you should stay away from the Sydney and Melbourne markets. Now, at the time, those two markets were rising steeply, okay? We got 2 interest rate cuts in 2016, which really fueled the market. So I copped a lot of criticism by people saying, Nero, you don't know what you're talking about. Those markets are rising. They're going to keep going to the moon. Stop talking rubbish, essentially, okay? Some people were quite abusive. However, the results are in. And we know that those two markets have fallen. Sydney prices have fallen now to where they were in 2016 and expected to fall further. There's a lot of debate right now about which market's going to fall more, Sydney or Melbourne. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about right now will be quite counterintuitive, okay? But let's get started. Number 1, what's the first thing I would do? And what I would do is I would start with you, okay? I would start with you as a person. What I mean by that is this. There are so many strategies out there to create wealth through property. At the moment, if you go onto YouTube or even if you're watching this video on Facebook or wherever you're getting this information from, you will see there's so many people out there talking about different strategies, okay? Some of them are valid, some of them aren't, but many of them are, okay? So the question is, how do you pick what's right for you? Do you follow someone who says find from the right market? Do you follow someone who says do this particular strategy? What do you do? And unless you're clear on what the right strategy is for you, you're going to end up spending so much time chasing your tail, more than likely either ending up not doing anything and maybe missing out on opportunities, or worse, making a mistake that costs you time and money. So what do I mean by you? What I mean by that is this. What would be the right strategy for you? For example, I was speaking to a doctor recently. She's busy, working long hours, but she wanted to go and do a renovation job. She wanted to buy a property. She'd been inspired by, I think, the block, and she wanted to go and buy an older property, renovate, add value, and hopefully sell it for a profit within 12 months. Okay? Is that a valid strategy? Sure, lots of people have succeeded with that. But I had to ask her, where was she going to get the time? She barely had enough time to even come and see me, let alone where was she going to have the time to go and find the property, even if she wasn't going to do all the renovations herself, arrange all the people, the tradespeople she needed to. Where would she have the time to manage the project over such an intense period? Because she wasn't trying to do this over a few years, she wanted to do it over a few months because she wanted to make a quick turnaround and profit. I said, where are you going to find the time? And she'd never even considered that before because she'd been so enamored by, I said, what she'd seen on the block and perhaps some stories she'd heard from friends and family. Okay, so you need to be clear on what the right strategy is for you. If you're time poor, you need to find a strategy that's not going to involve much time. Then the second one is, what is your time frame? Now, that's a really, really important one, okay, because I see so many people out there saying, I want to make money over the next 12 months. Okay, I want to buy a property and make $100,000, $200,000 the next 12 months because I know someone who bought an off-the-plan property in 2012. It was finished in 2013, 2014, and they made $150,000, $200,000. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, did that happen? Sure, it did. But is that normal? Not really. And if that's what you need to do, if that's your total focus, you've got to ask yourself, is that realistic for you? All right. If someone comes to me and says, I want to buy property where I'm going to make a stack of money over the next 12 to 18 months, can you guarantee it? I'll pretty much say, guys, that's not what we do. We're all about helping people buy property in a safe and secure manner over the long term. Okay. So, and when I say long term, I'm normally saying about 10 years, minimum 5 years if you're looking to make money from one particular purchase. Okay, you've got to have that time on your side for the properties to rise in value, right? So if you are looking at a very compressed time frame, the question I've always got to ask is, why are you looking at property as your vehicle, number one? Number two, why is the time frame so compressed? Okay, so you need to really, really be clear. The other thing is, if you have a time frame of say 10 years, which is quite reasonable, that then leads into the next criteria, which is, what market do you look at? All right, because if, for example, you have a criteria, say, for example, you're someone who's, say, 25, for example, you want to find your first property, you might move into it maybe 10 years later, who knows, 15 years later. You're not really buying it from a capital growth perspective, at least not over the next few years. You just want to buy something, have it rented out, and sort of then be able to do your thing and come back to it in the future. Well, that's fine. Okay, that strategy means you might buy in Sydney right now, even though the market is falling, because it'll eventually come right, maybe 10 years down the track, who knows, and you're okay with that. However, if you're looking to retire in the next 10 years, if that's your plan, all right, the first thing you got to ask yourself is then, wouldn't you be better off buying in a market that's either flat and expected to rise in the near term, or a market that's already rising? Okay, for example, when I bought in the Sydney market in 2011, the market had been flat at that time since about 2003. So 8 years of virtually zero growth. Okay, and here I was investing big in the Sydney market. Many people who knew what I was doing thought I was crazy. Yet we know what happened shortly afterwards. 2012, the boom hit and prices skyrocketed. And yes, I benefited from that. Okay, however, the criteria was that I wanted to invest, and my criteria always is to invest with a time frame of creating wealth within 10 years or less. Okay, and so therefore I want to be buying in markets that are either flat, but have been flat for a long time and are expected to rise, or markets that have already started their price curve, their upturn in price. Okay, what I do not want to be doing is either buying in a dropping market where prices are dropping month on month, for example, Sydney, Melbourne right now, or a market that's really had a lot of steam for the last few years. There have been stories out there about people who've made lots of money and all that, and it all sounds great, except the problem is that all that money that everyone else has made, all that capital growth they've had, you don't get that when you buy. You only get the future capital growth. So you do not want to buy in a market that's had a lot of steam, had a lot of capital growth, but is now running out of its steam right now. All right. That was, for example, why I came out in 2015, 2016 and said, Sydney market is cooked. It's running out of steam. It was like a train that had been building up steam and now was running out, and it was going to now decelerate and then turn around and go backwards. Okay, so make sure you understand that when you get your time frame right, it then works out what type of market that you want to be buying in. Because sure, if in a flat market or even a market that's falling slightly, if you decide you want to go and renovate and subdivide, you might be able to make money. And I say might because it all depends on how much the market is dropping by. But if you're looking for a passive strategy because you applied criteria number one, which is that you are time poor, then you need to be looking at your time frames and then ensuring you get in the right market. Then we need to look at what can you afford. When I say that, most people say, oh, my broker said I can afford this, or the bank said they're going to lend me this kind of money. That's not what we're talking about. What we need to do as investors, if we're investing for the first time, we need to ensure that we understand our own cash flow situation. And not in huge detail, no. What I am saying is that you need to know how much surplus money on average do you have per month. Do you have an extra $100, $200 that you put into savings every month? More than that? Why do I say that? Because one of the things I always look at is when you're buying an investment property, you want to make sure it costs you no more than a cup of coffee a day, which is, say, $3 for a cheap cup of coffee, which works out $90, say $100, round numbers. Okay. Now, people say, oh, but Nero, I want to buy positive cash flow property. Yes, they exist. Yes, you can buy positive cash flow property in markets that are growing in value, no doubt about it. However, I'm always looking at the worst case scenario. I'm very risk averse. So what I mean by that is this. You might buy in a market where prices are rising. Great. You're getting positive cash flow, which is fantastic. And then on, say, the 15th of December, your tenants give notice and they leave. Christmas time. No one's moving into property. And you have now maybe 2, 3, potentially 4 weeks of vacancy, not because the market's bad or any of that, just because it's that time of the year. Do you have the cash flow to be able to handle that? Do you have the surplus cash? We need to know these things. So a lot of people think affordability is based on the price point. Okay, I remember speaking to someone who came to see me. They'd bought a property in the northern suburbs of Sydney. This is just before the boom, at about $1.7 million. However, they were in a deep pickle financially. Why? Because every month this property was costing them nearly $2,000 every month. That's $24,000 a year. And so they were coming to see me to say, hey, look, the bank said they'll give us more money. I'm like, oh, okay. And we want to buy something that's positively cash flowed, that's going to then stem the bleeding, stem the flow. I was like, that's a very risky strategy. Because what happens if the positive cash flow property happens to be vacant? Because all property over, say, a 10-year period, it's going to be vacant at some point in time. So we need to look at your total affordability. Right, so always look at what can you afford in the worst case scenario. How much surplus cash do you have? What's your surplus cash flow on a month-to-month basis? And then take it from there. Then we look at, what do you buy? Well, right now, I think you all know that the unit market is essentially going backwards. So if you want to invest for any scope for capital growth, buy something with land on it, whether it's a townhouse, if that's what your affordability is, or a house. Right? Stay away from the unit market. Every report pretty much you're going to read is telling you that the fall in the unit market is either worse or not as bad as expected. Either way, it's a fall. So unit market, stay away from. And mind you, that's a real mind shift for us in Sydney and Melbourne. Because in Sydney, for example, what do? We often have our home, and then we want to buy an investment property, we buy an apartment because it's apparently lower maintenance, it's a better yield, but that's outdated information. And that's why what I'm giving you here is what I would do in 2019. Because right now the rents in the unit market is dropping like a stone. It's dropping way worse than the house market. The yields on many of these units, the rental yields, is falling so badly. In fact, some areas of Sydney, the average rent for a 2-bedroom unit in 2019 is less than it was in 2012, 2011, in some cases in 2010. We're talking they've just dropped the rent so much. Why? Because it's so hard to get tenants, because there's so many units and not enough people. So you want to stay away from the unit market, stick to something with land on it. And then, do you buy old or new? It's a common question. Well, older property sometimes is cheaper upfront, sometimes. However, the question you've got to ask yourself is, what's cheaper over, say, your entire journey of holding the property? Okay, say it's over 10 years. Because with a newer property, you get depreciation, which helps you with cash flow. You're probably going to get better quality tenants and higher rent. You're also going to have far less maintenance issues. All right, if you buy an older property, don't be surprised if you've done your cash flow numbers all great, but then you haven't allocated money for maintenance, and who knows what that's going to be. And all of a sudden, over the next few years, you've got to start fronting up large amounts of money to fix things in the property. You don't want that. Sure, if you're looking at a active strategy of renovating, then that's different. But if you're looking for a passive strategy where you just buy a property, set and forget, safety first investing, which is kind of the focus that we have, you want to stick to brand new so that you don't have the headaches. All right. So again, the type of property you buy comes back to yourself, your strategy, your time frames. Right? If you're looking for something that doesn't take up too much time, doesn't eat into your cash flow, it's going to make you money as the market grows over the next few years, then that's when you want to stick to brand new property. And then the last one, and this is probably the biggest one of all, and that's why I've left it till the end, because I know that not everyone gets to the end of these videos. So it's the most crucial one, and it's this. It's your team. For every property you purchase, you need 3 people on your team. Okay? Number 1, once you've purchased the property, I'm going to start with the end and work backward. Once you've purchased the property, you need to have a good property manager. All right? Let me give you an example. A client of mine bought a property in a location where the vacancy rate was really, really low, and I will come back to that as a bonus criteria in just a moment. Okay? But it was very, very easy to get the property rented on paper. They decided to go with a property manager that a friend recommended. Great. No problems there at all. Except they couldn't get their property rented for 3 months. They waited that long. They tried to get out of the lease earlier on to find a new property manager, but the old property manager said, no, I'm going to find you someone. And for 12 weeks, they had zero rent. Then they went with a property manager that I recommended. And I kid you not, their property got rented within 7 days, within 1 week. So property manager number 1 couldn't get rented for 12 weeks. Property manager 2 got rented within 1 week, 7 days. That's the difference. Number 2, you need to make sure you have the right finance consultant, mortgage broker, whatever you want to call them, around you. Because in today's market, 2019, getting a loan for an investment property is a totally different kettle of fish to getting a loan for your own home. All right. For example, I had a client recently who used a broker who was, I think, their friend's son, and she just wanted to help him out. All good. He got the loan approved as well. That was fine. She thought, great. She'd made the decision to buy a house and land package, which was the right call for her, gave her a massive saving on stamp duty, and also allowed her to buy in a market that was rising in value, but getting it at a cheaper price. And with a house and land package, you don't pay the total loan up front, you pay for it in installments as the property gets built. So for her, it was the right call. Except her friend's son, who was a mortgage broker, had never done a construction loan before. So every time the builder said, look, we've hit our requirements, and now can you pay this amount of the loan, he didn't know what to do. He sent her the wrong paperwork. He sent the bank the wrong paperwork. It got delayed and delayed and delayed, and this poor client almost ended up having to pay penalties. And she hadn't done anything wrong. She was on the money. She'd made her contributions. She signed everything off within 24 hours. Zero issue. But the broker did not know what it was doing. And she was stuck because it was her son's. It was a friend's son, rather. So you've got to make sure when you speak to your broker, ask them, how many investment properties do they have? How many investment loans have they written before? Because if you get that wrong, either you're going to fail to get the property, or afterwards you could easily have some problems. Okay, so make sure you've got the right finance consultant. And the third one is make sure you've got the right investment strategist in place. What I mean by that is this: you need to have someone who's not only helping you put in place a plan, understanding you, your personality, your constraints, your time frames, helping you put in a strategy in place, helping you then find the right properties that matches that, but then also helps you review the portfolio. Okay, because for example, let's just go back to where I was at 2015, 2016. You're about to retire. You might have a couple of properties in Sydney. I came out and said, that's the time to sell. And the clients that listened to me are now sitting pretty. They made the maximum gain they could. They're fine. But others are now going, who didn't listen to you, Nero, and now we're in this position where do we sell? And if we sell, we're going to have to make less money than we thought we could make. Do we hold on for the next few years? And it's a very, very different conversation. So your property strategy should be also helping you not only create the plan, show you which properties to get into, but then also monitor it ongoingly. For example, we touch base with our clients once a year, at least, because we want to help them decide when the right time is to sell. For example, we've got clients right now who are buying in what I believe is the strongest market in the country, which is Brisbane. They want to see growth the next few years, but I know that their plan is to sell that property and then come back and buy their own home in Sydney once the market sort of stops diving like it is right now and flatlines. Okay, it's a great strategy. It's what I did personally as well. So they want our guidance to tell them when the right time is to sell. So you need to make sure that you have the right team in place, because property investing is a team sport. And so many people try to do it on their own without getting the right guidance, because unless you have the right guidance and team, this whole property investing thing can be a much more difficult journey than it needs to be. All right. And then finally, the final criteria, which I again have kept till the end, is you want to make sure you buy a property in a market that's easy to rent. Now you might be saying, of course, that's what we want. A lot of people forget that. Okay, you want to make sure you buy a property in a market where it's easy to rent, where the rental vacancy, because a lot of people ask me, that's great, how do we know it's easier to rent? Okay, 2 ways. Number one, you speak to at least 3 property managers to get a sense of what's going on in the area. Don't just speak to one, because you might end up speaking to a property manager, like what I said earlier on, the property manager who took 3 months to rent out one of my clients' properties. Right? You just make it a poor quality or inferior property manager. So always speak to at least 3. But then secondly, and sometimes even before that, depending which way you want to do it, look at the vacancy rate. You want to be buying in a market that has a vacancy rate of sub 3%, below 3%. 3%. Why? Because when you buy in a market which has a vacancy rate of under 3%, you buy in a market where there are more tenants looking for properties than properties available for rent. There's an undersupply. Unlike, for example, what's happening in those suburbs in northwest of Sydney, where some of those vacancy rates are like 9%, 10%, so nearly 1 in 10 is vacant. Okay, so there's no wonder it's hard to get those properties rented, and rents are actually falling. So make sure that when you do your research, when you're looking at areas that the vacancy rate's under 3%. Okay, so hopefully I've covered 7 things. I think I lost count somewhere along the way, so there may be more, but either way, I really hope this video sort of helps whet your appetite about what you need to be looking at if you're looking to buy an investment property in 2019. Now, if you'd like a full plan about how to do that and look at the 3 things you need to consider when buying your investment property in 2019, literally where to buy, what to buy, how to buy it, then there'll be a link below this video to another 30-minute video, which you can watch, no opt-in, no nothing, okay, that will literally go through where I'm recommending clients buy right now, why, and you can literally use that information to go ahead and get your first investment property. Look, I really hope this video has helped. Please leave me a comment below about your thoughts, and if you feel this can help someone else, please share it. Bye for now.